Hey dancers, welcome back to Broche Banter. I am your host Julie and I wanted to do a little different episode today, just me and you together. I asked for questions on the podcast and got some really great ones. I'm going to go through the questions, answer them all, and if you have more questions, shoot me a message. I would love to hear if you like this format of the Q&A, if you want to hear a bit more from me, as well as the amazing conversations that we have together. So let's get started. One question, would taking a class with a recording allow me to watch myself and assess how I did, where improvements are needed? How does that work? So interestingly, I find with ballet, such an interesting thing about ballet is that there's a bit of taboo around individual practice. If you ask any musician, they will tell you that individual practice is an absolute must and a staple, and that every single musician should be practicing by themselves. But sometimes in ballet, and especially with adults in ballet, there is so much fear around developing a bad habit that people can take this to mean that you shouldn't practice without supervision at all. But actually, it is so important to practice by yourself. It is so important to do your best to learn how to self-correct. Being able to self-correct is a huge tool for being able to make progress. If you don't know what's wrong and how to fix it, then your progress is definitely going to be hampered and hindered. So it is a very keen eye. Like, you basically have to learn to be your own teacher if you really want to improve and make really big progress. You want to be able to know if you're doing something right or wrong. Now, this is where tools like a mirror and video can come in to help you learn and understand what you're doing, if it's right or wrong. But you want to be able to develop this ability to know, like, okay, when it looks like this, it's because my elbows aren't in the right place. Or when it looks like this, it's because I forgot to turn out. Or when it feels like this, it's because I lost the engagement in my core and now I can't balance. Being able to self-correct and figure out your own mistakes is a huge, huge, huge part of becoming a more advanced ballet dancer. Yes, you can develop bad habits when you practice by yourself, of course. That is, you do want to develop good habits, but so much of learning ballet as an adult, you already have a million bad habits as an adult. Your posture is already a bad habit. The fact that you live your life in parallel versus turned out is already a quote unquote bad habit. How we will naturally hold our arms down is already a bad habit because we hang our elbows down and move around with our hands, as opposed to ballet where your elbows should be forward. So as an adult, like, your life is already full of quote unquote bad habits for ballet, and your number one job as an adult learning ballet, like if you really want to improve your technique, your number one job is to get better at changing your habits. So even if you develop a few more habits along the way that aren't so good, if you've honed the skill of changing your lifelong habits, you will be able to get out of any bad habit that you do end up developing in a few weeks. But anyways, habits don't develop that fast. So you'd have to be practicing a lot by yourself with never seeing a teacher before you might develop something that would be quote unquote permanent. But again, like, your life is full of quote unquote permanent bad habits, and your job as an adult ballet dancer is to learn how to change those long-standing bad habits. So anyways, back to the original question. When you're either practicing alone or working from a recorded class, of course, you can have many, many goals. Maybe your goal is to just relax and let loose and have fun. That's fine. But if your goal is actually in that moment to be improving, then your job is to have massive self-awareness and to always be checking yourself, whether internally or looking or having a mirror or recording yourself and watching it back on camera. But you always want to be paying attention to what you're doing so that you're really focusing on how something feels in your body when it's correct versus how it looks. Something that's often very surprising for people is that how things feel is very often not what they look like. So a straight posture will actually often feel like a very tucked pelvis, and like your back is really far forward. Like, a straight posture in your mind doesn't feel quote unquote straight. And it takes a lot of individual work. It takes a lot of study. It takes a lot of awareness to actually shift your idea of neutral into the place that you want it to be for ballet class. So I find that individual practice is hugely necessary and hugely beneficial for dancers, the same exact way that it is necessary for musicians, the same exact way that it is for somebody studying a beautiful art form at a high level. Individual practice, learning how to self-correct, learning how to remember what your teacher told you and try to apply it on your own, checking what your body's doing versus what you thought it was doing. All of these are incredibly important skills for continuing to level up as a ballet dancer. Next, about private lessons. What do I need to know about private lessons? Can I choose the topic, or should the teacher know the topic and pick it for me? Do I work on more than one thing? This person is asking, in what ways can a private class help me compared with group classes? Well, first of all, private classes are very much tailored to your individual needs versus group classes where the teacher is just doing their best to deliver something that will cater to the group of people who are standing in front of them. Especially when you're teaching adults and you have a group of people who are maybe different every week. Some people can make it, some people can't make it. You might get people at varying levels because that's the only time that they can make it during the week. So when you're a teacher teaching a group class of adults, you're doing your best to cater to everybody in the room and you're not honing in on the specifics that one person needs. Whereas if you go to a private class or individually practicing with a specific class, recorded class, that's really what you need to work on, you can focus on the areas that you specifically personally need. So for example, some dancers are going to need more work on their feet. Some dancers are going to need more work on their posture. Some dancers are going to need more work on their elbows. Some are going to need more work on their turnout. And the private teacher can really focus in on the one area that you specifically need to work on. And that is hyper focused to your personal technical gaps. Another thing that private lessons can help with is something that's not currently offered in the group classes that you're taking. For example, if your ballet studio doesn't currently offer a path to point work, or they don't currently offer a bridge from the beginner level into the intermediate level, they don't currently offer like knowing what those things are, right? The beginner level has no pirouettes, the intermediate level has pirouettes, and there was no discussion in between of how to get from a class with no pirouettes to a class with pirouettes. So there's kind of a missing gap in the levels of the classes that you have available to you. The other thing that can help with is faster progress. If you're feeling impatient with the progress that you're getting in a group class, private lessons can sometimes speed that along a little bit because it can really focus in on the areas that you personally need to work on and are having issues with versus, again, just a general class. Who sets the agenda for the private lessons? Well, it depends on the teacher. Some teachers will have an agenda that they like to work on with their students, or they have their own sort of plan or approach that they would put every student through. Other teachers are going to be more open and desiring for you to bring some initiative to the private lesson of what you want to work on and what you want to improve on. If you are seeking out a private teacher and you don't know what you need, what you want to work on, you can ask for goals. Like, for example, I want to be good enough to be in the intermediate class, or I want to be good enough to go on point, or I want to look more graceful. I want to really understand the technique of ballet. You can say those goals that you have, why you're seeking out private lessons, and then from there the teacher can work backwards and tailor it to you. Because as a student, you don't always know what you need, but you might know what you want, and your teacher will help you figure out what you need to get there. Private lessons are not necessarily needed in order to make really good, meaningful progress. What is needed is for you to personally understand what your body needs to do to make these different ballet shapes. So for example, you need to understand what correct posture looks like on your body. You need to know what correct port de bras looks like on your body. You need to know what correct turnout is. You need to know what these things are so that you can then either self-correct yourself or bring that to a group class. If you have a lot of self-awareness already, if you're pretty body aware, you've done some sports in the past, or maybe some yoga, or maybe some dance in the past, you can often develop this yourself. You can look and you can use the measurements that the teacher's giving you, like the shoulder should be above the elbow, it should be above the wrist, and you can look at that and start to self-correct and start to look and see if it looks correct. You're going to get a faster answer if you go to a private teacher, but if it's not within your means, if you don't have access to it in your area, a really good mind, a really sharp eye is really what you need, right? And that private lesson, that person outside of you can give that to you. I highly recommend doing some private lessons if you have the ability to. Maybe you do once a month to check in on your technique. Maybe you have the ability to do it more frequently, a more frequent private lesson, but some cadence to give you that place, that time, that space to say like, I was getting this correction in group class and I'm not exactly sure how to apply that to my body, or my elbows just don't look right. What access am I maybe missing with my elbows? And kind of give you that space to collaborate and to experiment with a teacher. That can be extremely valuable in your ballet journey. I'm a big believer in focusing in your ballet journey. So whether you're focusing with the help of a private teacher or focusing with the help of individual practice, that is where you do make the biggest strides and the biggest difference in your ballet technique and in the level of your dancing. What are your top 3 tips to get started on double pirouettes? Good one. Number 1, you need to be able to pick where you landed your single pirouettes. So you need enough control at the end of your single pirouette to put your foot down wherever you feel like. I recommend one of my favorite kind of goofy exercises for this I call landing en croix or target practice. And it is when you do a pirouette, before you go, set an intention in your mind of exactly where you plan to put your foot down after the pirouette. It doesn't have to be correct like in a ballet position, but you need to be able to decide exactly where on the floor that foot is going to go. Because if you don't have the control to put your foot down in a specific spot after a single pirouette, you don't have the control yet for a double pirouette. You want to be able to control the end of a single. So you can land maybe in fifth, maybe in fourth, maybe diagonally off to the front, maybe in a lunge in the front of you, maybe into an all to cone. Do you want to be able to finish your single pirouette in a specific location, in any spot in the room? You want to be able to land that turn. That's number one. Number two, as you're working on continuing from your single turns into your double turns, the spotting is actually often a really tricky place that will hold people back from getting into their double pirouette. So as you're coming around from the single, what you want to do is look at the front of the room. You do your single turn, you spot your head, keep looking at the front of your room and let your chest continue past your head. So you get this idea of leaving your head and your body continuing. So start the turn, let your body continue rotating and leave your head in place. It doesn't matter what happens with your feet in this particular exercise, but it will help you get the idea that you continue turning after your spot. So you coming around for your single, you spot your head, you keep looking at the front and you let your body turn. Once you feel you've reached the end of the flexibility of your neck, go ahead and put your foot down and try again. That exercise gets you comfortable with the idea of moving beyond that first single turn. And tip number 3, this is one that when you're coming around for your single turn, you have to keep your arms continuing into the second turn. So you're finishing the first turn and you're used to opening your arms. You're used to this idea that you spot your head and you open your arms to land, but you need to think that you leave your head and you push your back arm, your second arm, more around. You almost need to imagine you're making force for a second pirouette. You're not actually making more force in the air. It's not exactly what's happening, but a lot of times we finish the single and the arms start getting left behind. Finish the single and keep pushing your arm. Keep pushing your arm beyond the single to start the next turn. So all of this is about, number 1, controlling where you finish the first turn. Number 2, getting used to the idea that your spot doesn't finish the turn. Your spot you can spot and you can continue the turn afterwards. The spot is not the end of the turn, it's the middle of the turn. And then lastly is to keep the arms moving past the single pirouette, thinking about going through the pirouette and then pushing your arm. Almost, you can even think about your second hand overtaking your first hand into an incorrect overcrossed first position to give you this idea that that arm continues on into your second pirouette. Have fun with it, have patience with it. It's kind of weird to spin around twice in the air, but once you get it, it's actually really, really fun. So have patience with it. Try to smile every once in a while to kind of loosen up your neck and loosen up your nervous system and have a lot of fun as those doubles start to materialize. Okay, here's the next question. In fifth position, our arms are above our head, but just a little bit forward so that we're able to make out our fingers by peripheral vision. However, in pirouettes, dancers seem to have their arms directly above their head. Does fifth position change when we do turns? Yeah, now that is a super interesting question. When we do turns, you will often see dancers with their arms more overhead and a little bit wider. Now, this position is much stronger for your back than having the arms a little bit forward. The arms up, back, and a little bit more, the fingers a little bit more separated, gives your back a really strong and powerful place. You especially see this in a turning attitude, so that the arms are not dragging you forward. You'll see this in the attitude pirouette, the arms up and back and into that shoulder blade position. Now, some people will say, no, your arms shouldn't change position, but I would say your arms do change position based on what you're doing. I think about your arms as 2 different types of port-de-bras. You have functional port-de-bras and you have decorative port-de-bras. Now, a decorative port-de-bras is not actually creating movement in your body. It's just decorating your movement. It's your artistry. It's your breath. It's what makes you look alive. And then you have port-de-bras that's functional, where your arm is actually creating force or creating balance or creating stability. Now, the shape of a functional port-de-bras can sometimes be a little bit different than the shape of a soft, decorative port de bras. So if you're doing an arabesque pirouette, for example, those arms are going to be way more locked into place in an arabesque pirouette than they are in a beautiful reaching arabesque and an adage. They're going to be a little bit different look. Same with those arms up in the high fifth. In fact, it is actually one of those things about ballet that's a bit debated where those arms go. If they go forward, you can see, or up and back over your head. But definitely when you're going for a turn with your arms overhead, you need to feel your back. You need to feel your shoulder blades almost coming underneath your armpits. Your shoulder blades coming apart, forward, and underneath your armpits. And the easiest place to feel that is with your arms a bit more back over your head. So I say yes, and I turn like this too. If I'm doing en dedans, open the arms and they come up and back so that I'm getting my back really strong and engaged and ready to help me with that pirouette. Okay, let's talk about balance. Balance is a huge question that comes from adults. This question is specifically about proprioception, which maybe is a word that you've heard about. But let's talk about balance because this is a huge question that adults often have when they're learning ballet. So first of all, balance is a big deal as we age. Like, it is a huge deal as we age. How many of us have had the tragic story of someone close to us who's older fall and break a hip and end up in the hospital and then unable to live independently afterwards? A fall risk is a really big thing as we continue to age, and being able to keep your balance is actually something that is very difficult as we age and something that we really need to do a lot of work to keep up with and to maintain as we age for a really good quality of life. When we're thinking about balance in ballet, the great news about ballet is that you hold on to the bar for a lot of it. One of the reasons we do hold on to the bar is so that we can learn how to hold positions that we otherwise would find very off balance. So for example, when you're turned out, the balance is very difficult. And so we hold on to the bar so that we can put our body into these difficult positions and strengthen there without worrying about falling over. If you didn't have the bar there, you can't really even train as hard because you can't actually get into these really challenging positions without falling over. So the bar enables you to train harder and more aggressively and more intensely than when without the bar. But we do need to, at some point, dance and leave the bar. And now this is often the source of great concern of adults learning ballet. It's embarrassing by this age to fall. It is scary at this point to fall. It is very unnerving. And this idea of keeping your balance is very scary. It can be very intimidating to people when they walk into a ballet studio. When you think about balance, you've got a couple of different aspects of balance. Number one is the musculature and the muscle strength to hold your body. So with ballet, you have the musculature aspect of balance, and then we also have in general, the balance, the proprioceptive aspect of balance. Like if your brain knows where your body is in space without looking. So this is that you could close your eyes and still maintain your balance, or you get a little dizzy and you can still keep your balance, or you're holding a bunch of groceries and so you can't see your feet, and then your ankle turns a little on the curb but you don't lose your balance. That's your proprioceptive balancing system and the ability to know where your body is in space. So in ballet, we've got a whole musculature around making balance, and this is completely focused on opposition. So for example, when you turn your legs out to the side, you have nothing to support you from falling forwards or backwards. When your feet are facing forward, actually you have the entire length of your foot, which is very forgiving. If you are falling forwards or backwards, your feet are going to catch you. Once you turn your legs out, your feet are no longer going to catch you if you're falling forwards and backwards. The balance is actually completely different when your legs turn out. So what we have to do instead is develop these forces, these musculature forces in our body to hold us still. These are isometric forces, meaning that you're doing a lot of work, but nothing is happening. You're staying still, kind of like if you push your hands against each other, nothing is moving, but you're doing a lot of work. So our turnout, the muscles in our hips, the turnout in our hips is creating stability and balance by isometrically opposing each other. So one hip is isometrically opposing the other, and that generates force, which can generate balance. Like if you picture carrying a stack of books, if you put your other hand on the top, it's much easier to carry the stack of books because you have that isometric pressure from both sides holding the stack of books together. Same system with your hips. If you're turning your hips out, one hip is pushing against the other, and you have that isometric force holding you up. You have this isometric force with your body. You're using the front of your abs to close the front of your body. You're using the top of the abs to pull down towards the bottom of the abs, the lower abs up, the upper abs down. And in opposition, you're pulling your shoulder blades down your back. So you've got the front trying to shrink down and you've got the back trying to shrink down. And then there you have locked in your body and your posture. You've got the back of the head pulling up. You've got the chest pulling wide. You've got the kneecaps pulling up. You've got all these forces in your body just holding you in place. Even if all of these forces are in place and you have the musculature of it, your proprioceptive balance is huge to being able to keep your balance. Even if you've got your turnout working, your muscles are in opposition, but you get disoriented and you fall over or you don't know where your body is in space, you're going to find it difficult to balance. So that's why, especially in my classes, and something that I encourage you to do is work on your proprioception, which is balancing, let's say, on demi-pointe and turn your head left and right, balancing on flat on one leg and closing your eyes, balancing on flat and turning your head, looking up and down, getting this sense of your body in space. You can also swing with your head upside down to try to move your head in different ways and not fall over. These are all skills that continue developing your balance so that you have more confidence on a single leg and not falling over. Leaving the bar in ballet can be really, really intimidating for adults for this very reason, this fear of falling over, this fear of losing your balance or of losing your footing. And working on your proprioception, working on your balance, understanding the technique so you get the musculature of where balance comes from in ballet are all huge, huge, huge aspects of improving in ballet and also, as I said, improving your longevity and actually your quality of life as a whole. Okay, if I only have time for one or the other, should I do bar or should I do center? That's a great question. It all depends on your goal that you're going for in that particular moment. When you have limited time, it's all about focus. So let's talk about what you would focus on. Why do we do the bar? Why do we do the center? And what are you looking for? Doing center without bar only makes sense in this one particular type of scenario. If you're trying to learn what a step is, if you're trying to learn what is a pas de barre, if you're trying to learn what is a balancé, if you're trying to learn which way is en dehors or en dedans, if you're trying to learn how to do a waltz turn, if you're trying to learn the what of something, then you don't need to go through an entire ballet bar to just stand there and learn what is a pas de barre. You should be somewhat warmed up before you try anything to do with jumping or getting your legs up super high. But if you're thinking about just what is a vocabulary word, which arm should go up, what is croisé, how do I follow along with the combination, like these type of things, you don't need to be that warmed up for. Now, if you're working on landing your pirouettes, if you are working on getting higher jumps, if you're working on speed in your petit allegro, or something that requires your body to be in tip-top shape, then you should go through a full ballet bar before you do the center. This is because a ballet bar, especially one really focused on technique and slow musculature activation, will prime your body for these movements. It will prime your hips to hold you. It will prime your body. It will basically get your mind into ballet mode. It will get your body into ballet mode and get you ready for these difficult movements. Don't go into the center with no warm-up expecting yourself to get your best pirouettes. Sometimes it happens randomly where you're in the kitchen and you're relaxed and you get your best pirouette, but really truly to study something that actually requires your body to be in very good shape. That's why we have ballet bar first, to prime your body to be at its best, to go into the center and try these challenging physical aspects. Now, if your goal is to improve your technique, if your goal is to improve your turnout, if your goal is to work on your feet or to work on your posture, then if you only have a little bit of time, I would say do the bar. Pliés, tendus, and rond de jambes are where you get the most of your technique at the bar. If you can do pliés, tendus, rond de jambes, and a few relevés, let's say that takes you 25 minutes, you're getting so much of the technique that is learned at the bar. This is how you pick up your feet. This is how you bend your legs. This is how you stand up straight. This is how you balance and turn out. This is like all of the core things that you need to improve your ballet technique. So if you only have limited time and one of your goals is to have better technique, more beautiful lines, then do bar. pliés, tendus, rond de jambes, and a few relevés. You'll get so much bang for your buck. Now, if your goal is to improve your arms or to improve your port de bras, I don't recommend doing either of those things. I recommend standing still and working on only your arms. Just focus in on your arms. 15 minutes of just working on your arms is more than enough time to get a really good understanding of what's happening with your port de bras, to have time to shape your wrists, to have time to shape your fingers, to have time to work on exactly how you move from first to second, to have time to work on those imbalances with the one shoulder that tends to lift and isn't as flexible as the other, and how your head doesn't always sit exactly straight. That's a whole different type of thing to work on, and you don't even need to have a ballet bar or center to work on that. Just work on those exact precise positions, moving from one to the other, and focus in on what you actually care about. So what to do when you have limited time? My question is always, what do you want? And then work backwards from there. So if you want one of these higher level skills, turns, jumps, extensions, you have to be warmed up to do those first. If you want something else, the what of vocabulary, working on your arms, working on your facial expressions, working on your musicality, improving your technique. These can be really focused, tailored, bite-sized sessions that could take 15 to 20 minutes, and you're going to get a lot of progress in a very short time. Okay, there's a lot here about point shoes. I think I actually probably should just do an entire Q&A just on point shoes. So if you have questions about point shoes, why don't you go ahead and email them to me, hello@brocheballet.com, and I'll do a whole Q&A on point shoes specifically. But let me go through one more question, not point shoes related. This person asked, I would like to know more about the Facets of Ballet curriculum, maybe not in the subject, but would like to know. Yes, definitely it's in the subject. Anything ballet is totally within the subject. So yeah, let's talk about it. So if you listened to season 2 of my podcast, I laid out the facets of ballet, how I see ballet training, especially when you're talking about ballet in adulthood, where you're not necessarily trying to go on to a professional career where you're expected to do every single aspect of ballet at an extremely high level. When you're really thinking about pursuing ballet in adulthood as a passion, as a deep, deep passion, most people will find that they're actually really interested in a few areas. Most people will hone in and focus. Some people get really obsessed about technique and turnout. Some people get really obsessed about feet and point shoes. Some people get really obsessed about getting their legs higher, or about executing a pirouette, or that feeling of floating in a circle. Some will be obsessed with jumps. I find that it's actually really interesting that people have a very specific goal. Oh yeah, another big one, being more graceful. That's a really, really, really big one that people come to ballet for. They admire the grace, the gracefulness, the easefulness by which people move their bodies. They like the artistic expression and the connection with the music. So as I laid out in season 2, I see ballet as very specific to goals and not just like as a general thing that you have to learn every part of. Like with the language of English, some people are going to want to be poets, and some people are going to want to be business writers, and some people are writing for court. Some people are writing for work. Some people are writing emails. Some people are only writing text messages. Everyone uses the language in a different way that calls to them and that really speaks to them. Same with ballet. It is a whole language. That does not mean that you need to do all of it, like all of it, want to work on all of it, or work on all of it to the same level. If parts of it you care about and parts of you don't, you can kind of take or leave and pick at it a la carte. There, in season 2, in the Facets of Ballet season 2, I laid all of that out on the table of what all the different areas were and how you would work on them. And since then, that was really kind of my first public speaking of my thesis of how ballet should be taught to adult dancers, to people pursuing ballet in adulthood. I suppose it could be applied to someone learning it recreationally as a teenager, but often they have their own kind of local studio politics to navigate. It can be a little bit trickier. But specifically for people learning it in adulthood, as people coming to it from many different starting places with many different goals, with widely varying lives. Since then, or even before then, I had started developing this idea. Actually, back in 2016 is the first time I have found an old slide deck of when I had sort of made like a pitch for this idea and for this concept. So actually now it's 2025 and that was 2016. So this has been brewing in my mind for how many years is that? That's a lot of years. That's 8 or 9 years. So 2016, I first ideated this concept, and in large part because of how I personally came up in ballet. I came up in ballet with a combination. There was very little for adults at that time. I came up with a combination of private lessons and with youth summer intensives wherever I happened to be slightly young enough to be in them, and just a lot of individual practice. I mean, I would just practice myself so much and go to my private teacher, and then we would find areas to focus on. And it was very much piece by piece, and the things that I was interested in would focus and learn those things. So it was very much like how I learned and how I saw other things being taught. So anyways, that is how I developed creating this whole program at Broche Ballet. So I had my Denver studios for a few years, and there I did straight levels. So we had like level 1, level 2A, 2B, 2C, 3A, 3B, 3C, and 4. And within that, what I tended to find with just straight levels, which is why in 2016 I had this idea of topics, not levels. Like, it's really topics, not levels. This idea of levels that I had, of course, in a group class setting, it's a little tougher to break it down so far. What you find is that someone is ready to level up on the bar, but they're nowhere near ready to level up on turns, or they got their jumps down, but they're still having a lot of trouble with bar choreography, or they've got this one thing down, but this other thing is really struggling. And for some people, they just like actually don't care about that very much or want to work on it that much. And so it's like, do you hold them back from the higher level because that one area is weaker, or do you put them up there, then that area keeps getting weaker? Or how can you really help people develop in this way? And so when I closed my studios, obviously due to COVID, when I closed the studios and could no longer continue keeping them open, I switched to my Broche Ballet online program. And that gave me the flexibility to actually teach by topic and not by level. The classes were shorter because people didn't have to like commute to a studio and make the time worth it. So I could do a 15-minute class on one topic, a 20-minute class on another topic, and really start to bring my vision to life of how ballet should be taught based on topic, not necessarily by level. Of course, each topic has a level, but like a level where you're expected to get every topic up to the same level is kind of difficult, and in many cases unrealistic or even undesirable. So when I started Broche Ballet online, I started teaching topics, not levels. You can also serve a lot of people this way because people of many different levels might be interested in this one topic, and they can come together and focus on that one topic. So from there, and from building the topics up week by week, class by class, over the period of time teaching online that way, I had this vision in my head from the beginning of teaching on Broche Ballet online of this curriculum that was topic-based. Each topic has several levels, and then within each level has several topics, right? So kind of this grid, this matrix of levels by topics. And over time, I had been organizing all of my recordings by topic and by level, and over time it took full shape into the vision of it, the Facets of Ballet, which was on my second season of the podcast. Maybe that's 3 years ago by now. And since then, I have been chipping away step by step, day by day, week by week on actually putting these together into full, I think it's about 30 total programs of levels by topics. So level 2, for example, has all the facets: technique, turnout, pirouettes, jumps, artistry, choreography, variations, all of the topics in level 2. Level 3 has the same, level 4 has the same. And this really enables a dancer to do all of level 2 if they like, or for example, then to pick a topic and go really deep in the topic. So you could do artistry level 2, artistry level 3, artistry level 4, and save the rest of the topics for later. So this program finally, after all these years of working step by step, day by day, has finally come to fruition in the Broche Ballet online platform to give you really what you're looking for, to look at a matrix of programs and say like, yes, I want to work on this particular aspect, and I want a progression of how to work on that aspect, but I want the progression to be just focused on this one thing, not scattered across a million different things to focus on. I want to focus on this topic, and then this topic, and then this topic. And so the Facets of Ballet curriculum that is just launched this year in January is my sort of brainchild since, like I said, since 2016, and evolving over these years of teaching adults this whole time to really put together my vision for how an adult with a big passion and a finite amount of time and energy to actually learn and deepen into what they personally care about. So whether you're working on one facet at a time or a few different facets at a time, this whole system and this whole program actually makes it possible for you to pick your goal, and then the progressions will help take you step by step to actually work on that particular goal. When you have limited time and when you have limited energy, focus is everything. The more you can focus, the more you can do in a small amount of time. If you have a specific goal, stop working on things that aren't related to that specific goal. Focus in on that one specific thing so you can actually see real and meaningful progress in that limited amount of time that you have to work on. So that is the whole Facets of Ballet curriculum. I'll be talking a lot more about it this whole year. I mean, it's a really big and exciting thing that I've been working on for so long, and I'm really, really happy that it's out there in the world. So I'm really excited to, I'm happy that question came up, and also really happy to talk about it here and to continue talking about it this year, because I'm really, really excited to see it come into the world and to see it really start to help people really improve and make real progress on the actual things that they care about within this wide world of ballet. All right, dancers, there's actually a couple more questions on here about me and about Broche history, but I feel like we could do a whole Q&A on that too. So why don't we do 2 more Q&As? Send me questions if you have any on pointe shoes or going on pointe or anything along that. Send me questions if you have questions about my story, how I got here from a computer scientist to now a ballet teacher for adults. Send me questions you have about that. And any other questions you have on your mind. We'll do a couple more Q&As together, because I think there's a lot here that we could talk about and get to dive into. So I hope you enjoyed this different style podcast episode, and I hope to hear a lot of your questions soon. I'll be back in your ears next week with another awesome Q&A episode. And until next time, I wish you very happy dancing.